when I'm doing things the right way, even when no one's, that's inconvenient. Because it's very convenient to just, ain't nobody looking. This woman got a whole husband, but she trying to get with your boy.
Right. We're on a work trip.
And she fine. Bad. Right? It's inconvenient in that moment because of your urges, lust. It's inconvenient to say, you know what? I'm not doing that. You in a sexless marriage. Show another foot. Another woman want to help you out. No one has to know, right? That's inconvenient when you know you have a need. What is the long-term effect of this? This is Caesar Walker, the cool, calm, collected one.
And I'm Ronnie Gatry, the emotional one.
And we are the Tipping Point Podcast, your source for the black male's perspective.
Tipping Point Podcast.
Dude, I was listening to this podcast. It's crazy because the main three guys on there are like big entrepreneurial business guys.
Yes.
And they're usually on there talking about like, hey, this is how you get your business to scale and all that boring stuff. But
you listen to it.
Well, because it had a different hook on it. It had enough bait to. Well, not actually. Let me stop tripping. I had a frat brother send it to me.
Okay.
Yeah. So he said, hey, man, you may need to listen to this because I know y'all talk about marriage and stuff like that on your podcast. I was like,
okay.
Cool. So I listened, and they're talking about business. And finally, one of the guys says, oh, yeah. And by the way, I've been divorced for 2 weeks now, and it sucks. And so the conversation shifts. And it shifts to him. And he's sharing honestly, candidly about his shortcomings as a husband. And so as the conversation progressed, the main host of the podcast, who's this business mogul, is supposed to be, you can never tell nowadays, but he asked the guy, he said, man, what is your standard? And so the divorce guy was like, man, what are you talking about? The guy said, what is your standard as a man? And so he broke down what a standard was. And it's essentially a code of ethics that he lives by as a man, husband, and a father. So after he broke that down, he shared what his standard was. And I guess the biggest part of this is, since it is his standard, it is woven into his DNA. So he's at the point now with his standard where he knows no other way. And so the provocative part about the podcast is, and this is what they put in the title, but he claimed, the guy that presented, I wish I remember their names, but the guy that presented the standard theory, he says, man.
What's the name of the podcast?
I don't know. I have to go look at my text. You want me to look?
Okay. No, don't worry about it.
The host of the podcast says, man, since I've established and worked out a standard and I live by that, I can't get my wife off me. So, like Black is looking at me now like, what does that have to do with anything? But he asked the divorce guy, he said, man, I'm sure you and your wife are having sex. He's like, yeah. He said, was it out of obligation? He was like, yeah. And he asked him, he said, because you brought home all the money. He said, yeah, that's exactly it. He said, well, what about her? Oh, she wanted quality time. And that was the only thing he could not give her. So I've gotten a little long-winded about what happened at that podcast, but it was so good. But I want to take it back, and I want us to talk about developing, shaping, and executing a standard for yourself as a man, whether you're married or not. And I got a lot on my mind on this one, Walker.
I couldn't have imagined.
So where do we start?
Why is it so important?
Oh, man, because as a man who at one point had no standard, I was just out here kind of just doing whatever. You know what I mean? And for a man to not have a code of ethics to live by, it's very scary, because I think that opens the door for a variety of influences to penetrate, cloud your judgment, cloud your mindset, and who knows what you're putting back out there into the world. So it's not fun to talk about,
Yes, yeah.
But whether we believe it or not, we've adopted a standard of some capacity.
You say we, you mean
Men.
Yeah.
Men, because there's somebody influencing me.
Sure.
You know, you remember me my college days. I mean, I went through a period to where I thought I was like throwbacks and snapbacks or whatever the kids were calling it. With baggy clothes when that was in, like I thought that was me. But my standard was being driven by something else. What I was watching on BET, what I was listening to. And, I look back at that now and I'm like, gosh, what a waste of time.
Yeah.
I was young. I give myself grace.
There you go.
But yeah, so why is it important? Because as men, like, what is our primary role? What's our primary function? We're leaders.
Okay.
What's driving us as leaders? Something fulfilling, or is it something that looks good?
Okay. Well, like, why is it so important? Why is it so important that men have, what was it? It was defined a code of ethics?
Code of ethics / standard.
Standard.
We can interchange.
Why is
them
it
all.
so important for us to have that, in your opinion?
I had a blank until he started talking, and once he started talking, one of his old words came to mind, and that was consistency. If you have a standard and it's consistent, then your partner know how to deal with you.
I think it's so important to have, as men, to have a standard. I liked what you said about men being leaders, that you have to have a standard if you're going to lead, right? John C. Maxwell said a man who has no one following is just taking a walk. You're just taking a walk, right? Like, what are they following? And so I think it's also important because your behavior is a derivative of your standard and your values. And show me a person who doesn't have a code of ethics standards. I'll show you someone who lives a very chaotic life. I'll show you someone whose life is just very hectic and chaotic. Now, life happens to us. So I'm not talking about, something happens to your job or things like that. But I'm talking about a consistent pattern with certain people. They always find themselves in negative relationships. They always find themselves, struggling at work. They always find, like, it's a pattern with these people, and they're kind of all over the place. That's a person who probably, if you were to ask them the same question that guy was asked on the podcast, what are your standards? They probably couldn't articulate it. So I think it's very important because we need to understand where we're going. We need to understand what is our purpose. And there has to be a guiding principle in order for us to even strive for that thing, let alone achieve it, right? You look at some of the college football has ended. You look at some of the top programs in the country. You done?
It just started for me, but go ahead.
Okay.
This is not about that.
Okay. You look at some of the top programs across the country. Nick Saban just retired.
Oh my gosh, I forgot. I'm coming across his studio way too soon.
Way too soon?
Yes.
But he had a standard, right?
The process.
Yeah.
He had a standard, right?
Yeah.
And what's so interesting to me is that he had a blueprint process, as Black mentioned. He had a process for how to achieve success at that level, right? And you can be a star athlete. You can be someone who has all of the talent in the world. But if you are unwilling to adopt those standards and live by that, how successful were you going to be in that program? Right? So, in other words, his success wasn't an accident. Right? Very intentional. The things that they did on a day-to-day basis was very intentional. And I think as men, we have to be very intentional about our life. We can't just be going through the motions. Whatever will be. We have to be very intentional in terms of the outcome and how we're going to get there. And that's where, to me, our standards come into play. let me ask you guys this. Let me ask you gentlemen this about standards. How important is it? Is it safe to say that if you don't model your standard, you don't have one?
I don't think that's fair.
Okay.
Because I think every man has a standard. It may not be defined, and it may be murky. It may have a little bit of 21 Savage with some Tony Gaskin sprinkled on top. I don't know.
That's a crazy combination.
It is. That was so random.
Go ahead.
I was trying to think of somebody else in this 21 Savage business. But anyway.
Who are you listening to on the way here?
Ryan Leslie.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Touche.
Keep Tony Gaskins. You good?
Ask your question again, because
No, I'm saying is if we're not emulating, and I'm not saying we got to be perfect,
right.
I'm not saying I'm not talking about.
I'm going to bring up in a minute.
I'm not talking about perfection here, but what I'm saying is if you're not striving to meet a certain standard, is that really your standard?
No.
Okay. Why you said that?
Because if you're striving to meet something, you've already identified the goal.
Sure.
You've already said, okay, I'm trying to get here.
Okay.
You can develop a standard that gets you there.
Sure.
But one thing, and you asked me this off air as we were planning this, one thing I want to be clear about, your standard can evolve.
Okay. Yeah.
As a single man, your standard is one thing. Once you put a ring on it, take her down the aisle, or technically, whatever. Once you put a ring on it,
marry her,
your standard changes. It has to, because you're not the same anymore.
Sure.
That doesn't mean trash all elements of your standard that got you there.
Right.
Because some of that attracted her to you.
Sure.
But she's involved now. She's got to be a part of your standard. You know when it changes again, Walker? When you shoot the club up, these little things run out. Kids, your standard changes.
They literally run out.
Mine did. I can't speak for mine. She looked like she got sense. Mine some hooligans. They ran up out of there.
Stop calling your boys hooligans.
I love them, but yeah, I'm being extra. Standards evolve.
Okay.
Standards definitely evolve. And that's okay. So to go back to your point, if you've got your eye on a prize, it is okay for your standard to shift as you get there. Think about it. You want to talk about Saban? You want to cut me wide open when I'm hurting this week? It's fine. We'll go there. Saban even said...
Oh, Bama fans are so annoying. Well, go ahead. Y'all can be so annoying.
Anyway, Saban, I watched the interview with Reese Davis, and even he said there were iterations of what he called the fourth quarter program. He had to change as the game changed. You remember Saban when, it's alleged that he was reluctant to shift to this spread open, no huddle offense. But he had to. But it didn't change the standard. It just added a different element to it. The goal is still, at that time, was to hold up that crystal ball. That's what you're working for. How we get there is going to be different each year. That's fine. As long as your goal doesn't change.
Sure. Methods change.
Yeah.
Methods change.
Look at us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ain't nobody Dorton in here anymore.
People listening now don't even know what that means.
Exactly.
But as you alluded, because we understand that standards can change. But I'm talking about the guy who's just going through the motions of life.
Okay.
If you're not pursuing standards that will lead to your success and the things you want to achieve, do you really have a standard?
No.
Or are you just going through the motions?
You're going through the motions. Like your John C. Maxwell reference. Yeah, you're just going for a casual walk in the park.
Casual stroll.
Where you going? I don't know. When you coming back? I have no idea. Where you going?
We talked offline about this when we were building, talking through this conversation. And Black, as you begin to think, because obviously we're talking to men on a macro level, you begin to think about men who really don't have a sense of direction or guiding principles. They just kind of, for a lot of men, they kind of do what they've seen growing up. To Gat's point earlier, there are certain influences that have been made on us, and that's our programming, and we'll just go through life with that programming. What are your thoughts about that? About, obviously there's some things men want to do. Want to make some money, want to have some level of success as adults, right? But there may be some things, whether it be character related, whether it be whatever the case, there are just certain there are certain values or principles that they may not have really sat down and truly thought about, let alone adopted for themselves. What are your thoughts about that? I mean, normally your friends, because the look on your face is like, I can't even imagine this, but you know of men who are like that, right?
Yeah, I just think that even if they don't have standards, at the base level, they have like a sense of right and wrong. And that's probably a good starting point.
Right.
And once you have that level of like right and wrong, then you can sort of start developing like how you feel like within like interactions with people. Like say you talk to people, you get this result, like, well, I didn't like this. So you start building by those interactions. And eventually you get to, you like sit down and think about it like, well, I know how this made me feel. I know how this person made me feel. And like when you get to a relationship with a woman, all of them are different, but throughout all of these experiences, you're learning like you're building that standard just based off like your sense of right or wrong and your interactions with people.
Yeah.
But you may not come to that standard level for a period of time, but at the very beginning, you should have to at least know the sense of right or wrong, how you want to be treated. And then from there, you can probably work to like standards.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I like that step. You'd be amazed at how many people don't know how they want to be treated.
I think they know how they don't want to be treated.
But they don't know how they do. That's a good point.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I sent you something. I sent you Chick-fil-A's values.
Oh, gosh.
Now, regardless of how you feel about Chick-fil-A as a restaurant, like their food, I'm hungry too. Obviously, Chick-fil-A is my go-to for so many reasons. But I sent you some of their values. I sent you their values. There's this statement online that you can go look at. And I want you to read out their values. And I want you to see, one thing that you can say about Chick-fil-A is that regardless how you feel about their food, not everyone's crazy about their food, but one thing that is undeniable is their service. Second to none. Black, could you read out some of the values or the core values of Chick-fil-A?
The values and how they define them?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the first one is we're here to serve. We keep the needs of our local owner-operators, their team members, and guests at the heart of our work, doing what is best for the business and the best for them. The second one is...
Hold on.
Oh, okay.
Does that sound consistent with your experience when you come across Chick-fil-A?
It is. It's just...
That they put, obviously they understand what makes them profitable and successful, but they also put the needs of their customers as a priority.
I didn't hear that.
Read that again.
We keep the needs of our local owner-operators, their team members, and guests.
Okay. I didn't hear guests. I heard all business.
Okay. But the guess was at the end.
Okay.
They got to it.
It was in fine print, but...
It's like they start from the top and work their way down.
Sure.
That's what I thought was alarming. But go ahead.
Oh, you think
Alarming?
the customer comes first?
Yeah, because when I go to Chick-fil-A, I took the boys there this morning.
Okay.
I felt like royalty.
But
Where did that come from, though?
But again, that's all encompassing. So in other words, the value is we're taking care of everyone who is a critical part of the Chick-fil-A process. From owner operators, people who make the logistical business flow, to the people who come in and dine. We're prioritizing all of that. In other words, we're
Seems
thinking
like a pecking order to me. That's what was so alarming when I heard that. We don't need to harp on here. I'm just telling you what I heard when he said that.
okay.
I guess it's a pecking order, but they're all equally as important.
I'm seeing that now as y'all flesh that out.
Okay. But that's consistent with your, so that's kind of, that could be true because of your experience that you have when you go there, right?
Sure.
Everyone's being taken care of as a result of this process they have laid out.
Gotcha. Okay.
My pleasure.
What's the next one?
We're better together. It's through teamwork and collaboration that we do our best work. We're an inclusive culture that leverages the strengths of our diverse talent to innovate and maximize our care for Chick-fil-A's local owner, their team members, and customers.
Teamwork is what I heard there, right?
Yeah.
They work well together.
Yes.
Okay.
The third one, we are purpose-driven. We model our purpose every day, connecting our work and daily activities to our business strategy, supporting each other's efforts to be good stewards who create positive impact on all who come in contact with Chick-fil-A.
Is that consistent with your experience?
100%.
Okay.
Okay.
Everything, no, I'm saying everything that is done.
I thought of one small outlier here, but I'm not gonna do that. Yeah, I think you know what I'm talking about. You know the airport Chick-fil-A's don't live by the same code.
Hey, man, you stay out of Hartsfield.
I know you traveled recently. That's the only reason I thought of that.
But,
anyway.
dude, you know, that goes out the window. Say you've been out of the country for a few days or so.
Yeah.
And you come back to Atlanta, people be lining up to get that Chick-fil-A.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
As compared to what else is in the airport?
I don't know. That Popeyes in Hartsville be jumping.
Hey, you got to be at the right terminal, though.
True.
Right.
True. That's important.
You take the train.
You
all
take
way
the
to
train
another terminal.
and risk losing your get left. I got some chicken though. What's the fourth one?
The fourth one, we pursue what's next. We find energy in adapting and reinventing how we do things, from the way we work to how we care for others.
Yes.
I mean, the people outside taking your order so you don't have to wait long to give your order.
Right.
Them changing the window to a door so they can walk out and hand you your food instead of leaning out. Like, all of this is part of their values. Everything is woven into how they do business. Read that is, the question is, how are we going to do business as men in our daily lives? And what are the things that we're going to stand on in order to be successful and thrive? In other words, when people say, you know what, I want to be a person of integrity, that's my value. Can people look at your behavior and say, you know what, that person does have high character? Okay, my core value is mutual respect. You know what? He is very respectful. Like he treats people with respect. He expects you. I can see that in how your core value is something that you have to model. Because I think ultimately, when you are able to effectively model your value or your values or your standards or your code of ethics, you create a culture. Right? And this gets into something that I think why it's so important to have a standard is because now I get, as it pertains to my relationships, whether it's platonic, my friends, family, even my romantic relationships, I get to set proper boundaries. What's your thoughts about that?
That cultivating culture, you said something there, all driven by the standard you set for yourself, only because there's an influential component to that as well. And I'm such a big fan of this theory that you never know who's watching. Mm-hmm. You never know. And it's not to say you're going to attract the wrong people sometimes, because you are, but you're also going to attract like-minded people too. And now you get a chance to say, hey, Caesar, look, I don't know how we connected. You cool? This is what I stand on right here. These are my principles. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Right.
Get down with it or move on. Not really, but I say that for a fact.
Right.
But you said a lot there. That culture, that hit me when you said that.
Yeah. What you think about that? I mean, Black, in terms of boundaries, establishing a culture, people experiencing you and understanding that there's a certain way I should conduct myself when I step into this place or when I come around this person, or you know what I mean? Like, what are your thoughts about that?
I don't have much to say about that one.
Okay. Fair enough.
Like, just another thought. It's so cool now to talk about, I'm Ronnie and I stand on business. Like, okay, so cool to say.
Slowly getting tired of that.
Okay. I mean, is it getting worn out?
Yeah.
For me, I can't speak for everyone else, but it's January 2024?
Yeah.
Can we stop in February of 2024? I'll let y'all have the rest of the month.
You know where I see it all the time?
What's that?
In the comments sections.
Yeah.
Person A stood on business.
Yeah, I'm already there. But go ahead. I'm sorry. You were talking.
My challenge for men, like, as cool as it is to say that now and it's dwindling, I challenge you to stand on integrity. You know what I mean? What does that look like?
So that should be a standard.
Yeah.
Okay.
That doesn't play out.
Right? I understand.
When does integrity play out?
Well, again, I think that, what is integrity?
Doing things the right way. Projecting a certain level of respect and, without vocalizing it, expecting it in return. Integrity to me also is that doing the right thing when no one's watching and not caring about.
To me, that's integrity all day.
Right?
I shared this. I shared something similar. I had a close friend, consider him family, got himself to a situation where someone ran to HR on him about something that he said he did not do, and so he was so frustrated about his character or his integrity. He was frustrated about his character. I think he said his integrity, right? And I said to him, but you didn't do anything, right? He was like, yeah, but I'm worried about my integrity. I'm worried about my character or whatever. And I said, no. You're worried about your reputation. Reputation is what people know you as, right? Integrity is who you are when no one's around. And that freed him because you know what you did. You didn't do anything, right? So if you know that you didn't do anything wrong, then you can't stop people from coming in and trying to assassinate your reputation or misrepresent you in a way that's consistent with what you stand for. However, if you did do something in private that you shouldn't have done, then you have to make peace with that. You have to make adjustments. You have to deal with that. But if you know you haven't done anything, then your integrity is still intact, whether people look at you differently or not. And I think that, to your point, when you talk about doing what's right when no one is looking, that's integrity. Because no one will know No one will ever know that you're doing wrong if you don't get caught. That's the deception, right? And that's how your integrity can absolutely affect your reputation. Because all it takes is you getting found out, right?
True.
What's happening now with a lot of celebrities? It seems like lately over the past few months, it's just we just trying to expose people and expose and uncover all this, and people on social media can't wait to hear it, excited to hear it, right? Regardless of whether it's true or not, most people don't even care if it's true. They just want a good story. But I think that when you are a person of integrity, even these accusations that will come your way from people who may not have integrity, who may have not have character, those allegations, if you really took the time to do your due diligence, can't really stand. See what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't actually point a valid accusing finger. You can point a finger, but it's not valid. Right?
Right.
So I think that's what's so important about integrity, is that when I make it a point to do the right things, because what you're talking about there, you're talking about inconvenience, Gat. You know what I mean? When I'm doing things the right way, even when no one's, that's inconvenient. Because it's very convenient to just, ain't nobody looking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, this woman got a whole husband, but she trying to get with your boy.
Right. We're on a work trip.
Just me and her.
I can slide through that.
Just me and her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And she fine.
Well, of course.
And she fine. I mean,
Right.
no. That's fine, and then that's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Bad. Right?
You standing on business. Right?
I'm gonna stand up and walk out. You say it one more time. But it's inconvenient in that moment because of your urges, lust. It's inconvenient to say, you know what? I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. You in a sexless marriage, and show another foot. Another woman want to help you out. No one has to know, right? That's inconvenient when you know you have a need
Right.
that hasn't been getting met.
But you say she's trying to help you out?
She's trying to help you out. That's not help.
No.
Okay.
Not
That's
her.
not help. Okay.
She.
The other woman,
Yes.
the side.
Sound like help to me? No, I'm just kidding.
And the thing there is, you're always aware of what is the long-term effect of this.
Right. Because
Right.
there is one.
There's always one.
Yeah.
There's always one. So I to me, when you say integrity, sorry, I went on tangent there.
No.
But
I'm gonna ask you this since we're at this integrity moment. Do you think integrity is also having the courage to admit when you've done wrong?
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Absolutely. I think people can trust you as a leader when you can acknowledge that you've done wrong.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People can trust you that, again, you look at a person like David in the Bible, he was a man after God's own heart, far from perfect. Because when he was confronted with the truth, he knelt before it. And he was able to acknowledge, you know what? I have done wrong. What was so powerful about him is that he was able to receive it from someone in terms of a hierarchical structure less than him.
Yeah.
It wasn't like God came down and said, you need to repent.
That's a bar.
You're right, God. I can receive correction and instruction from someone who, from a hierarchical structure, they look up to me. I look down at them. I don't have to listen to you. But if I can receive that correction from someone that I don't really have to, and I do it anyway, that takes a lot of strength. It takes a lot of swallowing of pride.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely.
Has that happened to you with your boys yet? They correct.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That may happen on a weekly basis.
They correct you.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
Kids have no trouble. They have no problem trying to correct
It's both
you.
of them, too, because they absorb so much. Again, standards changing when you have kids. I have so many examples. Like, I'm trying to think of one right now. But, yeah, that happens on the regular. And at the point I'm at in my life now, like the example you gave, I got to acknowledge that. Yes, son, you were right. Daddy did say this, and I didn't do it, and I have no excuse. I apologize. And here's what I'm going to do to make that right. To a 10 and a 6-year-old.
It happens with my wife.
Oh, yeah.
That's my wife.
Of course.
I'm the head of the household. I'm the leader. But if she points something out, no matter how minuscule I think it is, because there's times I'm like, my wife will even preface it. Now I may be nitpicky here, but shouldn't you be mindful of what you say here about da da da? And I'm like, yeah, that was minuscule. You're absolutely right, but I will consider it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, you're absolutely right. But at the same time,
You ain't standing on business when you do that, though.
what do you mean?
You ain't standing on business.
You stop saying that.
I guess I can take this off my list of standards.
Selfishly, that did exactly what I wanted. So let's continue.
Goodness gracious. I told you this is annoying, and you just keep doing it.
Just like if you keep throwing Nick Saban at him, I guess.
Hey, did you know that Nick retired? Did you know that Nick retired?
He's no longer
He
standing on
gone. He no longer.
But like Bone, I miss my dogs, y'all.
Anyway. Where were we?
I don't know what you was talking about.
We were talking about how you can get correction from someone below you.
Yeah. And in all seriousness, all jokes aside, I don't think because there's some dudes out here listening who may not be listening, but dudes I know who would categorize that behavior of you receiving what your wife is trying to correct you on as you being less than. Like you're not the head of the house, so you can't let your woman talk to you like that.
Right. What are your thoughts on that?
Man, I think the brother that or anybody that comes at it from that standpoint doesn't know what effective marriage is.
Well,
doesn't have a biblical context of what marriage really is. I think this person has allowed society to dilute what they think marriage is. And it puts us in a weird space. And I think it's a key component of the gender war thing we're in, right? Because you got a narrative of men got to lead with an iron fist and, you don't tell me anything, woman. Get behind me. You know what I'm saying? The women are back there like, well, what about us? We can, whatever. No. In my belief, that is not how effective marriage was designed. Y'all work together. You're one. So if you're gonna marry this woman, you gotta trust that she's gonna have your best interests at heart.
Do you know that?
Kind of like what Nick was saying on our last recording.
That goes back to proper vetting.
Yes.
Sometimes lust will take people all the way to marriage.
We got some podcasts coming to talk about that, right?
Absolutely.
Keep it locked.
Absolutely.
I was going to say something else, Walker, and I forgot. I got caught up in promo.
Effective. You talking about effective marriage and how y'all are one and that y'all are working together.
Yes. And for me, like, it was a pride thing because I used to be like that. First 3 years of marriage, I don't want to hear anything my wife had to say. But you gonna correct me? It's mine. You know what I mean? Like, it was tumultuous 3 years to say the least. But once you get to that space to where you've created a safe environment for both to share critically about each other, dude, it's beautiful. It's beautiful, but you got to put in the work to get there.
All true. I agree, Gad. What I would say to men is, again, going back to having a standard, what she's addressing, what your children are addressing, is it consistent with your code of ethics, your values that you set, right? Now, if it's someone else's values, then maybe you are being led by someone else. Hopefully, you're setting a code of ethics that's not leading your family off of a cliff.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
But you have a standard, you have core values, and sometimes we have blind spots. We forget about certain things. We may slip of the tongue sometimes. We may say or do something that's inconsistent with the standard or values we set in motion. And your wife / help meet is designed to help you meet your goals. So if she's pointing out something that's consistent with what you stand by, what's the problem? Mm-hmm. It's not that big of a deal if they're standards you believe in.
Right.
And she's there to help you.
Let me ask you this. Does this mean you're always going to agree?
No. Doesn't mean you always agree.
Tell me more.
Well, if she comes to you with a concern, I think, and this gets into one of my core values, is mutual respect. I'm an open door. We can always sit down and talk about it. You can always make your thoughts known, right? But at the end of the day, I have to make a decision. Because there may be something else you don't see that I see. Right? I actually see your concern. I understand your concern. I'll keep that in consideration. But if I'm looking big picture at something that forces me to make a different decision or do something else, I have to trust my gut. And I don't expect that to happen all the time.
Right.
But there are going to be times when I have to be discerning of the situation to be able to say, I appreciate your concern. I will take that into consideration. But I understand it's my call at the end of the day. And so in that arrangement, in that process, she has a voice. I sat down and listened to what she had to say. Any concern she had, I thanked her for her concern. Continue to do that. Continue to talk. Continue to speak up. If you have a concern about that, I'm all ears. But I am going to make decisions that are in the best interest of all of us. Back to Chick-fil-A's core values. We're making decisions that affect everybody involved, right? And sometimes that's what I have to look at. Even if it's not, means you and I may not see eye to eye here. Does that answer your question?
It does. I'm going to put another question on top of that.
Okay.
In thinking about the standard that you have set, how does that factor in?
The standard.
Everything you just drew out for me in terms of disagreeing, in terms of you and your wife not always disagree.
Seeing eye to eye.
Yes. Sorry, this is my first podcast. I'm nervous. How does that, because it goes back to one of my opening comments about your standard evolves depending on where you are in your life.
Right.
So thinking about what you just articulated, how does that impact the standard that you have set for yourself as a man?
For myself as a man. So this is one of the things we talked about offline. There are certain standards there's a standard that I have that I want to be teachable. In other words, I can learn from anybody and anything, right? So I like information. I'm always open, which means I'm always in a position where I can evolve. I don't want to be stuck in my ways, if that makes sense, right? However, I do know that there's a balance to that because there's certain standards and values that I think have stood the test of time, right? So I will hang on to those, but there are certain things that do evolve, especially with generations, right? I am being teachable allows me to be an effective parent. to be an effective husband. Because to the point you alluded, there was a way I used to function when I was by myself. Now that there's someone else in the house, I function differently as a result. Still leading, but I'm considering that I have to be considerate of the fact that there are other people in the house. They have needs, wants, this sort of thing, right? So I'm taking into account those things. Being teachable allows me, because I've never been a parent before, I'm learning how to parent just as my child is learning how to exist in this world, right? So my child needs to understand that, hey, I've never done this before either, right? So we're learning together. We're going to learn together. We're going to figure this out together, which means you can come talk to us, but we're your parents at the end of the day. So when we have to take everything into consideration, say, what are my values again? Let's see here. Okay. All right. Yes, sweetheart, I heard you, but we still got to go in this direction. And here's why. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but I'm learning to, when I say teachable, I don't want to be that parent because I said so. You know what I mean? And not really talk to my child or hear them out. Because sometimes, even as a child, there were things that I saw blind spots in my parents. So if I'm teachable, I can learn from my child that, you know what, that is a blind spot of mine. You know what, I missed it there. You're right. Just back to your point again. So when you talk about how does that affect me, outside of my relationships, in my own household, I had to on this podcast, I had to learn to be teachable. I can learn from y'all. I can learn stuff from y'all. You know what I mean? I can't just be this knowing, like, that's a good point. I didn't think about that. I'm learning from y'all. You have a question.
I forgot he was over there.
Won't be the first time. You mentioned standards as a man. When you become married, do you impart your standards on your family, or do you like set standards for them, or are you like, as far as your wife, she comes in with standards of her own, like
I'm so glad you asked this. Go ahead.
Okay. So do you how do you go about standards for the family?
So I mentioned boundaries earlier. This is why I think when we date with intention and we're vetting, this is why it's important to have standards, because I can set proper boundaries. I'm teaching you my standards based on my boundaries. In other words, back to Chick-fil-A. Let's say they hire me and I show up to Chick-fil-A and I got a bad attitude.
You're not a good fit.
Okay. Got you through the deuces. You said I'm not a good fit. So both of y'all can see where this story ends, right? What's going to happen? I'm not going to make it. They're going to send me home with no check. Right?
It'll be a meal though.
It'll be their pleasure to walk me out the door.
With the meal there.
I don't know. If you pay for it. But the reason being is I am demonstrating that I do not fit their culture because I am not abiding by their values, which makes me a liability to Chick-fil-A. Because Chick-fil-A is only as good as the people implementing their values. And they're customer facing every day. All it takes is one person to come in and meet me. Chick-fil-A service ain't what it used to be. That's all it takes, right? And they cannot afford that. So anyone who comes through those doors and is going to be a part of their organization understands that I have to, even though I didn't come up with these values, they have to become my values if I'm going to don this uniform and act on behalf as a representative of this organization. So when you're dating and you're meeting someone, it's important that you have these values, mutual respect. Okay. This is how we're going to talk to each other. Even when there's conflict, even when there's disagreements, this is how we're going to talk to each other. Okay. I am not going to I'm not going to curse at you. I'm not going to call you out your name. I'm not going to berate you. I'm going to always stick to the issue. That's the standard I have for myself. In return, I will not accept you cursing at me, raising your voice at me, putting your hands on me. I won't stand for that. The moment that happens, this relationship is over. It's over. Especially as a man, because I can't afford to be in a domestic situation with you.
Too risky.
It's too risky. I can't afford that. I'm not playing with you. So it's important that you talk your standards with whoever it is that you're dating and that you're involved with. You need to let them know where you stand on things. Because if that person doesn't respect your values, even if it's a platonic friendship, how many guys are in jail today, Gad? Because they are hanging with people who don't respect what they've been taught. How many people who are dead today because they were the wrong place with the wrong people?
Yeah.
Look at Takeoff.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
How many people are no longer with us is because they're with the people who values do not mesh with theirs. They become a liability to you. So when you talk about you talk about having a standard, it's important that people know up front, here are the things that I stand by. Here's what I'm about. You make a decision. You cool with this? Then we can rock. We can hang it.
Thank you. But bro, I'm married. I've been married to her for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And she will not align with the standard that I have set. What do I do?
Man, why did you marry her? But
yeah, I didn't.
In other words,
I didn't hear your message in time.
Right. You got married going through the motions of life.
Going through the emotions of it all. Yeah. What do I do now?
Here's what I would say to you, because I don't know. I am not quick to tell people to get out of their marriage because I don't know the other person. I don't know you. Right. You know what I mean? And again, risky for men. If you got kids and you know what I'm saying? I'm not going to tell you to just uproot like it's like y'all just dating. But what I would say to you is you have to make an honest assessment of the person you're dealing with. And have you had an honest conversation with them? And have you told them the person that you married is gone? Now, they should know that because you should be modeling this change about yourself, right? Hopefully you are modeling something that serves everyone, including yourself. Right?
Yeah.
So it's difficult to ask your family to pivot when they haven't really seen a change in you.
That's a really good point.
Right?
That's a really good point.
It's difficult to because see, here's again, I can come to this person with authority when you already know I can cut this relationship off. Talking about dating, You're talking about marriage, I can cut this relationship, slap off one offense when I've been very respectful to you. You see me be respectful to other people, so you know I'm respectful. So when I tell you were disrespectful to me after we had the conversation and after you said you understood my boundaries, you can get mad all you want, but deep down, you know I don't play that. So when you go to your spouse, have they seen a change in you? Have you changed? And then when you've changed, when you're modeling these new values you've embraced about yourself, have you sat down and talked to them and said, listen, the person that you married, I'm not the same person. I'm not the same person. These are some of the things that I expect us as a family to model. Now, if this is going to be difficult, if this is going to be tough, you know me, you know where I'm going at. I encourage people to continue going to counseling long after you're. Counseling is about personal development, but we use it as the house is on fire, right?
Right.
We use it. Counseling is for emergency use only for a lot of us, but no, it's for personal development. So again, one of the things you value, again, I said I'm teachable, which means I don't have a problem going to counseling.
Right.
I don't have a problem doing therapy's cool because I get to learn more about me. I get to learn more about marriage. I get to learn more about my spouse. I get to put some things into practice that's going to help us. These are the things that I want us to value as a family. And she should know because you learning her. Again, there's certain things that should be happening that should make this conversation very easy, unless you just married a bulldog. Now, if you married a bulldog, which is possible, hey, again, I usually refrain from telling people to just get out of it.
Same.
Because of the effects. You enjoy seeing your kids and whatnot, but if you again, I understand there's women who are just they can't get out of their way. I encourage counseling. I encourage you seek professional help. Sit down with, we've talked to attorneys that talked about, hey, we're going to give you legal advice. We're going to give you information on how you need to proceed. Talk to counselors. Get information. Don't just leave.
Right.
Get information. Explore all of your options with that. If you're dealing with someone who's you married somebody who just don't care, right? So, hope I answered that question.
You did.
What y'all think about the whole boundaries thing?
Dude, boundaries are so important. But boundaries are only firm when you have a standard.
Yes.
Now, there's another important part about boundaries I want to share too. I think also sometimes boundaries are set and established from failed experiences.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I offer that because I don't want people to think that all standards are built on perfection.
Right.
Because they're not.
Right.
They're built from some failures.
Right.
But those failures, I think, are a key cog in establishing boundaries.
And I think that's a good point you make.
Right.
That's a good point that you
just
make.
ask Jonathan Majors.
Well, again, that goes back to the boundaries.
Yeah.
That goes back to the boundaries. And really and truly, because I wanted to talk about that situation, but this was the direction I was going to go with the Jonathan Major situation.
The boundaries?
Having values.
Yeah.
Oh, he found it because he wanted Coretta Scott King, right?
I'm not touching that. I'm not touching that. What I'm saying with him is when you have boundaries, oftentimes, I'm not going to say every time, but oftentimes you will avoid certain situations from happening. I'll go back to, and these are some things that Jonathan Majors has to take responsibility for.
100%.
He has to take responsibility for. If this woman really wasn't the woman that you needed and wanted her to be, how did y'all end up there? How did y'all end up there? How did you end up in that situation when there are in the court, there was evidence of you having this conversation. She's telling you she's showing you by her actions, I'm not what you need. he's got to own that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of men.
Tough pill.
There's a lot of men end up in situations. Me, remember the girl I talked about I dated who,
Yes.
okay. I didn't have a lot of these standards I have today when I was with her. So the disrespect was just rampant. Okay.
This disrespect from her.
From her.
Okay.
The disrespect from her was rampant. And it got to the point that I could see down the road, this could end up being a domestic situation. I could remember the conversation my mom had with me as a little boy, because I used to have a temper, bad temper. My mom was like, if you don't get that temper under control, if you don't get that anger under control, you're going to become a grown man. And there's going to be stiffer penalties or punishment for you when you act out as a man in the real world. If you got a family, you can't rage like this the way you raged as a kid. And I took that to heart, to the point I can tell y'all this exact conversation later on in my life that stuck with me, Gat. I began to feel the anger that I felt as a child in that relationship with her. And I could see down the line, if I didn't get out of this relationship now, it's not going to be good later. Because eventually, I'm going to snap. I'm going to see red, and when I come to, ain't no telling what has happened. The relationship at that point was over. I got out of it because this is not good. And I can't depend on you to change in enough time for me to cool off. So I'm just going to leave. Because one thing I did value at that time was not going to jail.
Right.
So the standards and values we have as men, they have to dictate what we choose to allow in our relationships. If they're not again, Chick-fil-A can't afford for me to decide I'm going to get my act together. Leave.
Right.
You can go. And I think as men, we have to stand firm on these values to the point to where if I have to walk this thing alone, apart from a relationship with this woman, if I have to go without sex with this woman, if I have to get her out of my life, so be it. I can't afford you. You're a liability to me now. I can't afford you.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah, with the whole Jonathan Majors, he has to take some accountability in some regards.
Yeah. I want to ask about what are some of the steps you can take to establish your own standard as a man?
It's a good question. Y'all want to build it together?
I was going to ask, as far as your standards, did you inherit some from your father?
Yes. I think that's a key cog.
I did.
Okay.
Can I say something here? Because this came up in the podcast that I referenced earlier. The gentleman who had recently divorced, he mentioned, to your point, that's what he saw his dad do. He said, my dad worked. He brought the check home, and that was it. So he didn't know any different.
Right.
So, like you were saying, that's his primary example. That is the foundation of his standard.
Right.
Now, you can argue his dad grew up in a different time to where maybe that was acceptable.
Sure.
But it didn't happen for him. He didn't know about an evolving standard.
Right.
I that's really sad. It really breaks my heart to think about that.
It's kind of like fences,
Yeah.
It's kind of like fences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like he did later admit, like, they did try counseling. He did take ownership, like, I just refused to change. I was too addicted to the grind. That's all I wanted. I wanted to see how to make more money than I did yesterday.
I think this is one of the areas where I think the manosphere fails men is we over-index on grinding. I'm not against the grind, but I think we need to teach men the importance of balance. There's a balance there. And you can argue, I'm arguing with outliers here, but there are men who grind their butts off and make money who get cheated on a lot. Their wives and women cheat on them with broke dudes. We've seen women, attractive women, show up to work, get out their own car. They get dropped off in their own car with a guy who don't have his own car.
All three of us have seen this.
Okay? So my point is, it ain't just about the grind.
Right.
It's more to it than that. It's a lot more nuanced than that, right?
Right.
So having a strong work ethic that's a great value, but we ran off several values that Chick-fil-A had. Right? You shouldn't just have one core value. You're going to be a one-dimensional person.
Exhibit A, yes.
Who's inflexible.
Right.
Right?
Even when he'd gone to counseling and got educated, he's in too deep at that
You have to have several. You have to build a value system.
So temporary pause here.
Okay.
Manosphere. I'm not like really in it like y'all are.
I never noticed.
One of the terms I hear y'all bringing up a lot is high value man.
Okay.
In the manosphere, is that strictly monetary?
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily.
Okay, because I'm about to say, if it is, that's another problem, which goes back to your balance theory.
I think people take that and they associate it solely with money. And I think it kind of takes on a life of its own from an interpretation standpoint.
What do you think about Kevin Samuels when he was talking to, when he had women on who wanted a man who made six figures? To me, that was all that encompassed a high value man, because that's the only thing we heard of.
Well, he actually breaks down what a high value man was.
Gotcha.
He broke it down. What he exposed on his show was that women wanted a certain lifestyle. And the men who happened to provide that lifestyle just so happened to be high value.
Gotcha.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's how that took on a life of its own. That it's a guy who makes money. He does, but there are other things about him as well.
Right. Okay.
You asked me about how does one develop purpose? I mean, not purpose, but a value system. I think you have to. I think therapy may assist in this. Back me up here.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes there's things that you take from your upbringing, that come from your upbringing, you can't take with you on your journey. And you're going to have to sit with someone who helps you unpack some of the things that you caught. You know, some of our lessons we learned was caught as opposed to taught, right? There's a lot of things that I do with my wife today. My dad never sat down and told me do this, but he modeled it. This is why it's so important that we model our value system to people intentionally. So there's a lot of things they catch that you'll never sit down and have a conversation with them about, right? So I think therapy has to play a part, because there's certain things from our upbringing that may not be able to come with us on our journey to building these new standards, number one. So I think we have to become students of ourselves, number one. That's my first thing. Become a student of who you are and why you're the way you are. Why do you do the things that you do? Do you want to change? Number two. And I think that in the same way that we become a student of ourselves, we need to seek out mentors from near and far who model the type of life we have. Okay, this man, I look at his wife. This dude ain't rich, but his wife just think he just fell out the sky. What does he know?
How do I get some of that? Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So I need to become a mentor, not only a student of myself through therapy and learning how to break some generational curses and whatnot, but I'm also learning from men who are modeling the outcomes I want. This podcast serves as an example. We're giving you strategies. There's other podcasts out there that do the exact same thing. Listening to people who are providing you solutions and telling you can do this. You can develop a standard for yourself. This is what your standards should. These are some of the things you should set for yourself, right? Get information. The reason why men can quote Kevin Samuels and high value stuff is because they were being mentored by this man and other men like him. Seek out men who have the outcomes that you want. And the things that you can take from them, you may not be able to take everything, but the things that are solid, take those things from them. Be willing to be mentored. Again, you have to become a very teachable guy. I think another thing too is, and I think this is something that I had to understand. I think for me, my faith played a vital role in shaping some of my values. As I mentioned, instead of having to reinvent the wheel that most people do apart from faith, there are a lot of values and principles that come from my Christian faith that transcends the entire religion. They're businesses. If you sit down and listen to Chick-fil-A,
Yeah.
all of that comes out of the Bible.
Yeah.
Now they're professed Christians, but I'm saying they're businesses that have taken principles out of the Bible and they're making money from it. They're teams have chaplains. They're teaching them biblical principles.
Yes.
These principles transcend religion. If you grab the principle from this faith and begin applying it to your life, you'll begin to see different results. So for me, my faith played a vital role in that. Therapy, being mentored, your faith. You got anything else?
Seeing other people's failures.
Learning from other people's mistakes.
That's part of mentorship. Yeah.
That's part of it, but yeah, that's a specific. That's that one I'm willing to take outside of mentorship.
Oh, okay.
Because yes, you can learn from anybody. They may not be a mentor to you.
Yeah.
They may not be mentoring you, but you can say, you know what? I'm not going to do that. That's how I learned as the baby of the family. I learned from my sister. I'm not going to do this. True. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Yeah, you can learn from other people's mistakes and then begin to set boundaries and rules or principles or values based off of what they did or did not do.
Especially like members in your family. Because like, I don't know how it was with you guys, but like when you're your kid and say your aunts get around, they start talking and they talk about people and what this person did and how they ended up here.
I don't talk to everybody about my,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. So hopefully that's a start.
Yeah. And that's all I was wanting. Like,
That's a start.
Get me walking towards establishing that. Yeah.
Yeah. I just think with the whole, again, I know some people are jaded and there's a lot of church hurt when you start mentioning Christianity and their faith or whatever, but a lot of church hurt is people related.
Yes. 100%.
In that book is a book of principles. If you learn the principles and adopt them for yourself, you'll begin to see some change in your career. You'll see change in your relationships. You'll see change in your mental state. There's a lot of things in that book that teaches you about life.
Yes.
And the application of it, to me, I think therapy is a big application of it. Because therapy can show you how to take those pages out of that book and apply it in life. Why am I struggling to do this thing in the Bible? Okay, therapy can help me with that. The person who's emulating what I want to do, I'm having lunch with them once a month. Just learning from this person. How did you get here? So many jewels you'll learn over lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I think it'd be good if you can pair what you said about therapy with like trial and error. Like you go through trial and error, but you have therapy to come and like, I guess, explain to you like where you went wrong.
That's what Emmanuel was talking about when he was here.
Well, and the biggest thing for me is when you're thinking about establishing your standard, it all goes back to what you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's been
What's the outcome you want?
That's been one of the easiest questions in therapy. Well, it's easy to hear. It's hard to articulate for me.
Sure.
But what do you want?
Yeah. How we doing, man? You got to go?
Yeah.
Okay. Good talk.
Thank you for agreeing to this concept. I appreciate that.
Oh, I'm down. I'm always down. You know, I always just want to know where you coming from. That's all.
Sometimes it's scary.
That it is. That it is. All right, y'all. Listen, I hope y'all grabbed something or got something from this. If you thought it was valuable, man, share it with some young brothers. Share it with your sons, your nephews. Share it with some people that need to hear this. I think it served us well.
I would agree.
In our older age.
I mean, it sharpens the sword, which is another thing I love about it. So,
Yeah. So definitely share it. Guys, hit us up, THA, Tipping Point, one word, on X, IG, and YouTube. With that, I'm Caesar Walker. That guy over there is Ronnie Gatry. That guy behind the scenes is Black, and we are the Tipping Point Podcast. Thanks again.